Welcome everyone. I'm Tracy Fitzpatrick and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at NETCOM Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's event, Microsoft Identity and Access Administrator Masterclass. Presenting today's topic is Brent Dawson. Brent is a Microsoft certified trainer with over 20 years of experience in the technology industry. Brent is also a Microsoft Dynamics architect who specializes in information security architecture, Azure DevOps, CISSP, SQL Server Administration, and architecture and enterprise architecture. He has delivered comprehensive Microsoft infrastructure and security training, giving his students the tools they need to build, maintain, and secure their Microsoft network infrastructure. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored to your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. NETCOM Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We do have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. And today's presentation is from the security practice area. NETCOM Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio of courses for the topic being covered today. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on the given courses. You can also access a variety of marketing assets, such as the free training and blogs, by clicking on the available event handout. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website at netcomlearning.com. In today's world, identity security is more important than ever, with cyber breaches related to identity theft having increased by over 400% since the pandemic began. In today's session, you'll learn how to protect your organization from identity theft by implementing an identity management solution, an authentication and access management solution, and access management for apps. And now I would like to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To begin with, you do have the option to view in full screen by clicking on the full screen button on the right side of the GoToWebinar viewer. Simply hit the escape key to exit the full screen. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. And to get the best out of today's events, we've included the slides, courses we talk about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You may refer to them at any time to get a better understanding of today's topic. And we do realize that some of you may have to leave early and want to let you know that as you do leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to take a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience and improve our future sessions for you. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. And now I'd like to pass this over to our trainer to present today's topic. Hey Brent, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hello, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. I hope that I am audible and you can see my screen.
Yes, you are audible and we can see your screen. Everything looks great.
Thanks so much. Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending. My name is Brent Dawson. I will be your instructor for the next presentation. I've been in the IT industry for over 30 years and as a Microsoft trainer for about 25. And I'll be instructing you on identity and access administration in the Microsoft platforms, including Azure and on-prem technologies. And I've got a fair amount of experience and background in the Azure platform. So let's get started and take a look at the presentation. So the first thing I want to do is break down sort of the five areas rather that we're going to be focusing on. First of all, we're going to be looking into identity management solutions and sort of the ones that are out there besides Microsoft and sort of what they are and how they differ from Microsoft, but also why they're important. Then we're going to take a look at some of the authentication and access management capabilities that exist in Microsoft 365. We'll then take a look at some of the best practices for implementing access management, an overview of identity governance in terms of how we can make sure that everything is working correctly. And then lastly, some of the ways that we can use to help identify, set up identity protection and security in systems. So identity management solutions are different tools and systems that enable organizations to manage and control the digital identities of their users. These solutions are designed to ensure that the right individuals have access to the right resources at the right time, while maintaining security and compliance with regulatory requirements. Identity management solutions can encompass a wide range of capabilities, including user authentication, access management, directory services, and identity governance. And with the increasing digitization of business processes, identity management has become an essential component of any organization's cybersecurity strategy, helping to safeguard sensitive information and prevent unauthorized access to critical systems and data. Whether it's used in the public sector, financial services, healthcare, or other industries, identity management solutions are a critical tool for ensuring that organizations can securely manage their digital identities and protect their sensitive information from cyber threats. So some of the more common identity management solutions that are available on the market are listed here. So we've got Microsoft, Okta, OneLogin by OneIdentity, Ping Identity, SailPoint, and so forth. So let's just take a look at some of descriptions around each one. So Microsoft Azure Active Directory, which is probably the most common one, is a cloud-based identity and access management solution that provides authentication and authorization for applications and services. It offers a range of capabilities such as single sign-on features, multi-factor authentication, as well as self-serve password resets. Another more popular tool is Okta. Again, this is a cloud-based identity application and identity management platform that gives us as well SSO, MFA, and user provisioning capabilities. And this allows us to integrate with various applications and including cloud-based and on-premise apps. OneLogin is another cloud-based identity tool that gives the same sort of capabilities. And it also has the ability to use biometric and smart card authentication. SailPoint is another tool, but this is geared towards more on-premise identity governance solutions in giving you user provisioning, access certification, and compliance reporting capabilities. And IBM Security is another tool that can be used for cloud-based authentication and identity management, and as well giving you a range of integration applications as well. So things like Office and so forth. So those are the sort of the top 10 identity management solutions that I could come up with when preparing for this presentation. And it just goes to show you that they all sort of do the same sorts of things in terms of how they work. But what's important is sort of how they present themselves in terms of the tool capability that is available for them. Now, for the rest of this presentation, we're going to be focusing on the Microsoft Azure Active Directory structure, and rightly so, because of course that's the most popular identity management solution that is on the cloud, because most organizations, or a good chunk of organizations, use Microsoft Authentication. But as an example, I have had clients that have used a number of different identity management solutions in conjunction with each other. So as an example, they've used Microsoft Azure Active Directory to manage user accounts and security roles and so forth, but also have put Okta on to handle their MFA capabilities, because they felt that it was more secure to have more than one identity management solution securing their environments. So this, it's not a one or done type of scenario. It is possible that you could merge a couple of different technologies together to give you the capability of recording, security for individual organizations. So as I said, we're going to focus on Azure Active Directory. So obviously Microsoft 365 and Azure are cloud-based suite of productivity applications and services, which helps users to be able to do day-to-day activities. It helps to place a strong emphasis on security, including authentication and access management, all built into the same environment. Authentication and access management are part of the M365 security framework, and they're essential to ensuring that only authorized users can access the resources while needing to keep malicious actors out, right? So you want to make sure that only the people that need to be in can be in. So there are a number of different components and processes that are used in terms of making up identity services, and they fall under the following kind of scenarios. So we've got identity providers, or IDP, right? So when we're using Microsoft 365, we're using Azure Active Directory as the identity provider, and it's responsible for managing all the user identities and handling the authentication process. So when a user signs in to Microsoft 365, Azure AD will validate their credentials and then provide the necessary tokens for accessing the resources. There's also the single sign-on capabilities that Microsoft 365 supports, which will allow a user to access multiple M365 services and applications with a single set of credentials. Using SSO helps to streamline the authentication process, as well as improve the user experience by reducing the need to remember multiple passwords. This is useful when you're connecting to not only applications that are part of the same Azure AD tenant, but also when you're connecting to external SaaS-based or on-prem solutions as well. Multi-factor authentication, or MFA, gives us an extra layer of security because it requires the users to provide additional proof that their identity is them and that it's more than just their password, right? So more common MFA methods included in Microsoft 365 are SMS verifications, phone call verifications, or using the Microsoft Authenticator app. And this helps to reduce the risk of unauthorized access due to compromised credentials. Now, past experience and knowing how the security industry works and knowing how hackers work, if you're going to be using Microsoft MFA, it is preferred and best practice that you use the Authenticator app. The reason for this, of course, is that it's much harder to spoof a one-time passcode that the Authenticator app will generate than it is to get a phone call or a text message. So if you're going to be setting up MFA, it's highly suggested and recommended that you use the Authenticator app to do the authentication for you. The nice thing about the Authenticator app as well is that it doesn't require you to actually type the code in. So you can actually set the app up so there'll be a pop-up on your phone, and you just press the authorized accept button on the pop-up, and then that will give you authorization as well. Another thing that it provides is conditional access. And so when M365 uses conditional access policies to help enforce specific conditions or requirements, this will help to grant access only to those resources that fulfill the requirements. So the conditions can include factors like where the user is logging in from. So if you're in a country that is known for, hacking or, spying or whatever, you can restrict access to those from those countries rather. You might have a device compliance to make sure that it has, updated versions of, the Windows antivirus or the latest, patches applied to the system, as well as other types of risk levels that it might calculate as well. And so the conditional access policy will basically give the administrator granular access control to minimize potential security risks, because it can go out and inspect the system before it allows and grants access to the resources. The third one, or the next one rather, is role-based access control. This is a method of managing access to resources by assigning permissions to roles instead of individual users. In Microsoft 365, administrators can create custom roles with specific permissions and assign them to users or groups. And as RBAC will then simplify access management and helps to ensure that users have only the necessary permissions for their job functions. So when we're looking at RBAC, really what we're saying is, if we have 500 users and we've got 100 shared folders as an example, and all 500 users need to have access to those 100 folders, that means that we have to do 100 access permissions 500 times, for each users. What happens when, user 25 leaves the company? So then we've got to go in and we've got to remove user 25 from all 100 of those folders, rather than setting up a role that gives permissions to those 100 folders and having the user added to that one role and then removed from that one role, then going through and doing it 100 times or 500 times or however many times there are resources that need access to. So all role-based access control is doing is it's making it easier for you to administer the system, add the users to the roles that they need access to, and then give them access to those resources as appropriate. Privileged Identity Management, or PIM, is another M365 service that helps an organization to manage, monitor, and control access to critical resources. So PIM management allows administrators to assign time-limited, just-in-time access to privilege roles, which helps to reduce the risk of unauthorized access. So as an example, if you need specific administration or high-level administrator role, you would use a privileged information managed account to be able to get logged into that particular system. Also, the PIM could be used for things like somebody who's an auditor. So if an auditor needed to have access to a system, you could give them, a limited time access to specific environments to get them, give them a chance to go in and do audits of the data that's listed there. And we also have the ability to audit and monitor all traffic. So we can monitor and audit all comprehensive logins, track user activities. We can detect suspicious behavior that people might be engaging in. We also can use it to respond to security incidents. So as an example, if, let's say that you work for a tax department, and you have somebody that works there that wants to go and take a peek at somebody else's tax return, but they don't generally have access to that folder, you could set up an alert to say, oh, hey, Joe Schmo tried to log into this folder even though he doesn't have access, and at which point you could then use that as a way to investigate a security incident. Maybe they went there by accident, and after you do your investigation, you decide, okay, that nothing happened. But if the person tries to go there, 1 or 2 times, and you can pretty much be assured that, yeah, that's not an accident. They're intentionally trying to get to that location, and therefore we need to, to deal with it. And so using these features can help an organization maintain visibility into their security posture, as well as maintain compliance that you may have to fulfill for different regulatory requirements. So in combination with all of them and working together, M365 and Azure provides the most secure environment for organizations and collaborate and communicate while protecting their sensitive data and resources. So let's take a look at some of the ways that authentication management and access management in Microsoft 365 works in a number of different sort of scenarios. So the first scenario that we have is just accessing an Active Directory resource forest in Azure, right? So here, using Azure Active Directory, we need to have an on-premise Active Directory forest, get access to and integrate with an Azure AD in the cloud. So you can establish a trust relationship between the two. And establishing this relationship allows for seamless user authentication and access management across the on-prem and cloud resources. And basically what you're doing is that you're creating an Active Directory domain in Azure that is trusted by domains in your on-premise AD forest. And you can do this using a couple of different tools, either using AD Connect or another tool such as an AD virtual network. Okay, so if we're using AD Connect as an example to set up the on-premise connection, first of all, we need to prepare the on-premise environment. So here we need to ensure that the on-prem AD is set up correctly, including ensuring that the domain controllers are running domains that are accessible and that you have all of the necessary administrative permissions to be able to do the implementation. Next, we need to make sure that we set up Azure AD Connect to synchronize the on-prem AD with your Azure AD. And so you'll install and configure the Azure AD Connect on a server that exists in your on-premise environment. And then during that process, you'll select the appropriate options to match the desired integration. This will include things such as password hash synchronization or pass-through authentication, federation, however it is that you want to set it up. Then you'll need to enable Azure AD services or domain services. And of course, this is going to be done on the Azure side. Then you'll create the instance in your Azure subscription and configure it to map to your on-prem Active Directory. Set up your trust relationships between the two sides so that the transfer of information can exist in a two-way transformation. And then we will then need to configure the user and group synchronizations to make sure that everything is updated properly. And then lastly, test the relationship to make sure that everything is working the way it should. Once you've done all of these steps, you'll have an Active Directory domain in Azure that's trusted by the domains in your on-prem AD forest, which will allow users to take advantage of those capabilities in the cloud and on-prem. So if we have an example of where this might come into play, let's say that we have Exchange Online, okay? So when we have Exchange Online, we may have a hybrid scenario where we have an Exchange server on-prem as well. So when you go into the office and you sit down and you type in your user credentials, your username and password, you're going to be logged into your local Active Directory and you'll connect to your on-prem mailbox in your Exchange server. When you're outside of your office, you'll still have access to your Exchange mailbox, except that it's now replicated to Exchange Online, and you'll log in to Azure AD to connect to your Exchange mailbox, okay? This is important because it allows you to use the same username and password in the office as you do in the cloud. And the reason for that is that Azure AD Connect will replicate your user IDs and your passwords between the two systems. So if you change your password in the cloud, it'll replicate that password change to your on-prem network and vice versa, so that everything will be maintained and up to date instantly. So you don't have to worry about having two different sets of credentials and going, oh, okay, what's my password for this and what's my username for that? And it just makes life a lot easier. A lot of organizations now, however, are going away from sort of on-prem directory structures and forests and going strictly to the cloud, which makes life even easier because now you can just use one set of credentials and it'll work everywhere in your organization. Another example of using access management in Microsoft 365 is the concept of zero trust. So zero trust is the idea that nobody is trusted to do anything, and you are allowing people to get access to resources as required. Okay. So here we've got an example where I'm going to have a partner company contact another company. So I'm Contoso, and then I've got Contoso's partner, which is Fabricam. Fabricam has their own Active Directory that has their own, users and software and tools and so forth, and they need to be able to get and test APIs from their application to my network. Okay, and so I have an API management console on my side, which has a developer portal and a management gateway. And then from there, I need to be able to go in and access resources. And so really what Zero Trust is doing is it's saying, I'm not letting anybody from Fabricam come into my network unless I validated a number of things. So I have application registrations. I need to validate the application before they can get joined in. I will have managed identities in my Azure Active Directory, which will keep track of all of the information about those APIs and those users. And from an API point of view, I have a management portal and a management gateway. And before anybody can get into, again, to my functions or to my databases, they need to be authenticated by those environments. And so using this Zero Trust principle is the most secure way that you can use to keep external resources from illegally accessing your resources on your side. Another version of this is a deployed ADDS in an Azure virtual network. And so in this scenario, if your application is hosted partly on-prem and partly in Azure, it would be more efficient to replicate the Active Directory domain services into Azure. And so this replication could reduce the latency that would be caused by sending authentication requests from the cloud back to ADDS locally. And so this architecture is common. We're using an on-premise network and the Azure virtual network connected together, whether it's by VPN or an express route connection or something of that nature. And the architecture will also support bidirectional replication, which means that any changes made either on-prem or in the cloud will both replicate instantly and be consistent across both platforms. So this is the example where I was using the exchange structure, where you have something that's on-prem but also in the cloud, and you need everything to work back and forth. If you need to extend your on-premise federated structures or federated services to Azure, that's a capability as well. And so here we have a number of different ways that we can replicate the configurations. We will move and copy the Active Directory subnets to Azure in the form of network security groups, which will act as a firewall. We will then have our servers, domain controllers running as VMs in Azure. We will then have our federated services subnet that again will be generated as network security groups to act as a firewall to protect the federated structure, as well as the different servers that will be then replicated into the Azure platform. And what this is doing is that it's allowing us this double entry structure. So we have our on-premise network, but we also have a backup of those federated service configurations to Azure, so that if our on-prem network goes down, we can rely exclusively on the federation structure and servers that are living in Azure. So it's a nice way for us to be able to extend out that on-prem capability and give us the extra capabilities and functionality of having cloud in there as well. Authentication and access management using integrated on-premise Active Directory is another way for us to be able to have Active Directory domains with Azure Active Directory structures. So in this example, we have our on-prem network with a domain controller, and we're using Azure AD Connect to synchronize to Azure Active Directory in our tenant. We also have on-prem clients as well as external users that will be connecting through Azure Active Directory. And then from there, we will then integrate those to domains that have Azure Active Directory structures. So in this example, by integrating on-premise AD domains with AAD domains. This scenario is used when, again, we're using the same sort of application and we need the same sort of identity and access management across both the on-prem and cloud environments. And so here we're going to be, again, connecting the two sides using Azure AD Connect to synchronize the user accounts and the passwords and any other synchronization configurations between our on-prem network and our Azure Active Directory tenant. And so here we can see that there's a load balancer that's in place behind the Azure Active Directory tenant that will allow us to send the traffic to a number of front-end web tier servers. And then from there, on the back end, we will have network security groups that will secure our business tier and our data tier systems. The advantage of this, of course, is that using the load balancer, we don't have to worry about setting up anything of federated services. We have one entry point, and that one entry point will then map to the appropriate servers to give us access. And the advantage, of course, of using the load balancer is if we lose one of the web tier servers or one of the business or data tier servers, the load balancers will automatically flip the load to the appropriate servers that are left. So we don't have to worry about, going in and changing IP addresses and giving access to other resources and so forth. And so this just allows us that layer of extra layer of security and administrative capabilities to allow the system to work better. So some of the best practices in terms of implementing access management for applications is pretty much sort of the same way that we were looking at other systems as well. So in this environment here, we've got, in this particular case, we've got an HR application, and we have a directory structure, we have Azure Active Directory, and we have whatever the particular application is. And then we will, allow for access to this resource, which will then give us access to other cloud or on-prem applications, right? So we have an application that needs to change something in a different SaaS-based solution that is external to our organization. And from there, we will then implement the access management for that particular application by provisioning the application in Azure Active Directory and then giving conditional access to that resource. And so here you can see a number of different types of resources, Microsoft and other, that would then be provisioned to allow access, right? And so here we can either do, we can then also include automated provisioning based on the application so that it would only run just in time. So whenever a resource needed access, it would only set up the provisioning for that resource during the time frame that it needs access. Outside of that, it wouldn't allow any access to the system, and there'd be no connection between your Azure Active Directory and any other cloud or on-premise applications that you might be connecting to. All right, so before we continue on to the next section, let's take a short break, and we'll come back in a few minutes.
Sure, we are now going to take a 5-minute break, but before we do that, we are going to launch a quick poll that we want to invite you to participate in. Doing so helps us know how we can better serve you by telling us who might be interested in more information or in taking some additional training. In addition, we have a lot more informative webinars coming up, so please go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's pick up from where we left off before the break. So one of the things that's very important about identity management is structure of governance, and sort of how governance is important in terms of the way that you manage how users are authorized and identities are given in the systems. So first of all, we need to identify and set up identity governance as a way to manage different tasks for services and applications, not only on-prem, but in the cloud as well. So we can use governance management and governance strategies to help govern identity life cycles. So things like automating when events such as adding, moving, leaving actions, those sorts of things, like, what happens when a person leaves the company, what happens if a person changes their jobs, that sort of thing. We also use it to govern access lifecycle. So manage changes to access rights by using self-service requests, password changes, those sorts of things, as well as monitoring those different lifecycle events. We will use it as a way to secure privileged access for administration. We will also use the governance as a way to identify the actual life cycle of the identities that we're providing. So it's a way for you to manage internal identities for things, let's say if you're working at a university, for educators and students, right? Everybody's going to get the same access to the same systems, but student accounts are going to expire before instructor accounts. Well, I would hope so. So that you can have a security profile around how those items are governed. As well, we can identify those that are created in the tenants that you're managing versus external resources, right? So knowing how you're going to deal with internal resources and work with those internal resources, but how are you going to work with external resources? How am I going to map those users to internal connections? Am I going to have them join as a guest? Am I going to have them created as users? That sort of thing, right? So we need to use the governance as a way to handle and manage that. Everybody in the organization, regardless of where they're working from, has their own resource requirements necessary for them to complete their job. And so identity governance is a way for us to make sure that those individual users can get the access that they need to get their job done, right? One thing that you hear a lot of, or I hear a lot of, or used to hear a lot of, not so much anymore, but why are you putting in security? You're just securing stuff for the sake of security. It's not really giving us any advantage. In fact, it's making our life more difficult. Well, that's not the point of trying to do security management. Like, we're not trying to make life difficult for people. We don't want people to not be able to do their jobs, right? And so setting up appropriate governance and setting up appropriate management allows us to implement security and identity management without going to the point of making life difficult for the end users. Because from an IT point of view, we're there to help the users. We're there to help the company. We're not there to be an impediment to them being able to execute their job and do their business, right? So how do we do that? Well, there's a couple ways. Obviously, user provisioning, role permissions, access resource permissions, any of those sorts of things as a way for us to be able to import or extract the information. So here's a couple of different examples of how we can do provisioning as part of our governance structure, right? So if we're looking at inbound users, somebody that's coming into our organization, we're going to have human capital management, so HR. We're going to have generally an employee information system. We're going to have, in this case, we're looking at an educational system, but we would also have student information systems that would keep track of all of the student records and classes and grades and all that sort of fun stuff. And those would need access to, Azure AD or Windows Server AD. And to get there, we need to do some sort of provisioning service that sits in the middle, right? So we might have, in this particular case, an API that connects from the source application to the Azure platform, and there'll be a synchronization engine that runs in the middle, i.e., some API tool that runs as a synchronization, and it will synchronize the source data with the target data and give you all of the access that they would require from the student system, the employee system, and then generate those user accounts in Azure AD, right? That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it might be extracting out a list of students into a large CSV file that contains the columns that are the minimum number of requirements to generate a user in Azure AD, and then use PowerShell to import that CSV file and create all those user accounts and assign random passwords. Or maybe you've decided that I'm going to set a default password and everybody gets the same default password, and the first time you log in, you need to change it, that sort of thing, right? So it just depends on how you've decided that you want to manage the creation of these user accounts. The point is that when you have more than one user or several users, you don't have to do it one at a time, right? Because if you think about it, I used to work at a university that had 34,000 students registered, full-time, part-time, extension courses, all that stuff. That's a lot of sitting down to typing, and I'm probably going to get 3/4 of them wrong if I have to sit there and type them all in one at a time. So using tools like synchronization engines through APIs or CSV files is the right way to go. But my governance strategy is going to tell me how I am going to successfully execute that process, right? And how the provisioning will be completed, when the users are imported, what roles they get, what permissions they get, what password requirements they have, all of that sort of stuff. Now, that's if I'm just setting up users that are inside of my organization, okay? And they need access to Azure Active Directory. So that's one set of rules and structures that my governance plan and governance structure will define for me. The next one is outbound user provisioning. So what happens if I have users in my organization that need to go somewhere else, right? So they need to get from my Azure AD and they need to get to Canvas or some other educational system that's available online, and being able to have single sign-on to that as well. Again, I can use the same processes except in reverse, right? I can use in this case, a Graph API connector to extract out all of the user information for the students from my Azure AD, and then using the same synchronization process, push that into the SaaS application that I'm pushing it to, or that they need access to, right? So same processes, same concept, but the governance strategy would be slightly different because I'm no longer trying to connect to my own internal network. I'm now trying to connect to a system that is working external to where I am, but they still need access to those particular pieces of information. Next, some techniques for identity protection. So what are the sort of top 7 things that I can use specifically in the Azure platform to identify and authorize and authenticate users within the platform? First and foremost is the Azure Active Directory. We've already talked about this. This is our cloud-based identity and access management solution that pretty much gives us our single sign-on, MFA, and conditional access capabilities, right? So this is the #1 tool that we have to manage identities and security in Azure. The second one is Azure Information Protection. And again, this is a cloud solution that helps organizations to classify and protect sensitive information, which also allows administrators to label sensitive data and define policies for how it should be protected. So you've got encryption capabilities, labeling capabilities, and access restrictions to sensitive data. And then using this, organizations can help secure their sensitive information so that only authorized users get access to that data. The third one is the Azure Security Center, which is a unified infrastructure security management system that helps provide centralized views of security across the Azure resources. Multi-factor authentication to provide an additional layer of security to Azure AD accounts so that users are required to provide 2 or more forms of authentication. The Azure Key Vault, which is a cloud-based service to provide secure key management and secret management. And it also is a place to store and manage cryptographic keys, certificates, secrets, and also allows for you to restore or recover lost security certificates. The Azure Sentinel is a cloud security information and event management service, or SIEM. And this is a way that you can use to see things such as who's logged in, when they were logged in, did they log in successfully or unsuccessfully, and how many tries did they have? And this is a way for you to do real-time threat detection, investigation, response as well for user logins. And then lastly is the Azure Firewall. So the Azure Firewall is just another tool to provide security services and identity protection by blocking out unauthorized logins and access through a combination of application and network level filtering to help prevent against threats and attacks in the system. So that takes us to the end of the initial presentation, and we've talked a bit about what is included in the configurations and how do we access resources and so forth. But this is just a very high level touch on sort of the information that's available. Let's take a look at some of the next steps that we can use to get you better educated and more knowledgeable about the features that we talked about earlier. And to do that, we're going to have a short chat here about hands-on learning and how to get certified within Microsoft technologies to present information and to learn how to do things within the Microsoft Azure stack. So first of all, we need to look at it, sort of what are the benefits of certification. Certification is a way for you to kind of stand out from the pack. It gives you the opportunity to say, hey, I've done the training, I've got the knowledge, I've been able to pass a certification exam, which has some pretty tough questions on it, which gives me the ability to, to understand and have troubleshooting skills that other people may or may not have. And so it gives me some sort of recognition that, yeah, I can do this. It also gives a lot of people the ability to earn more money. So a good chunk of IT people, after they get different certifications from Microsoft, can earn up to 20% more in terms of salary expectations than that they did without it. And a lot of people believe that cloud certifications help to increase their employability. So they can, basically have much better or much greater opportunities within organizations or different organizations because they have certifications in those particular platforms. As part of the certification process, in the olden days, when I first started as a trainer, at the end of every course, when you were completed, you would get a certificate that you could take back and hang on the wall and whatnot. That's sort of old technology now. And so Microsoft has brought out what are referred to as open badges. And these badges are a way that you can show that you've successfully passed an exam. You can attach them to your social media, so things like LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. People can find you. Employers can use this as a way to show your interest in potential career changes, and it's a way for people to validate and verify your accomplishment from Microsoft. And as you can see on the screen there's a couple of different types of employer verifications. You can do it as a badge that shows what skills you've got, as well as just a badge that you can paste into your certification or into your different social networks. As part of your event handouts, there's a book that's provided to you called the WinWin of Certification. And really what this book goes through is it talks about the mindset of continuous growth and continuous training, continuous learning. A well-trained staff is probably 20 to 25% more productive than other staff, mostly due to the fact that they have experience using the system and they can solve a lot of problems that other individuals might not have the ability to do. And so using this training and reading the guide, it shows you how training helps to improve timeliness, insight, and business impact, as well as knowledge levels. It helps to increase both your personal and your career benefits through certification, how it can relate to higher pay, and also how it improves your productivity, efficiency, and job satisfaction. But it also increases your company's job satisfaction. So the staff that you have to do support for will find that you're better at solving problems, and therefore they may have fewer problems, or they may get their problems resolved quicker because of the background and experience that you have. So NETCOM recommends these courses to show your professional credibility. The first one being the exam for SC 200, which is a Security Operations Analyst. And it's sort of the foundations layer of how security works in Azure. Then we get into SC 300, which is what today's presentation was related to in conjunction with Identity and Access Management. And then lastly, SC 400 is information protection. So this is more geared towards data loss, information protection, and so on. To get to that level and to get the knowledge that you'll need to successfully pass the exams, it's recommended that you take a instructor-based or instructor-led training class that could be in person or virtual online. But regardless of the method that you take, you will get a live real-world instructor who has experience and skills to teach the course, but also to be able to provide examples of things that happen in the real world. You'll get virtualized environments that you can do virtualized labs in, so you can actually get hands-on experience, and you'll get 180-day access to those labs once you've completed the course. When the instructors are teaching the class, or at least in my case, when I remember to do it, to turn on the recordings, you'll get 90-day access to those recordings of that class that you attended to be able to go back and review. You'll get full access to the learner portal that NETCOM will give you access to. You'll have access to potentially free repeats if you feel that you need to repeat a course, and 24/7 support for things like accessing resources or having issues with the virtual environments and so forth. And so those are things that you get access to during and after the course completion. Lastly, Microsoft a couple of years ago implemented recertification processes. And basically, it's a way for you to make sure that you're up to date on your current skills and that you understand the new features of software tools and so forth. But the advantage of this, of course, is that it's free. There's no cost to you to upgrade your skills and to validate that you are knowledgeable in the latest technology that affect the type of job that you do. And again, you can renew your certification without having to pay for or pass any full certification exams like you do to get your original certification. So if you have a valid role-based certification or specialty certification, you'll get 6 months to renew it. So 6 months prior to your expiration date, you'll get an email from Microsoft saying, hey, you're expiring in 6 months. And then you've got that 6 months prior to the certification expiration to write your renewal exam and upgrade your certification for the next year. So if your certification expires April 14th and you did the certification exam on November 10th, your certification that would have normally expired on November 14th, 2023, even though you wrote it last November, doesn't expire until April 14th, 2024. So you get that extra time to be certified. And your certification doesn't end sooner based on when you wrote the exam. It's when your initial exam certification expiry would have completed. So as long as you write the exam and pass it before your expiry date, your certification will not expire. You will not need to do the full exam, and you're good to go in terms of certification. You can write it as many times as you need to until you pass it. If you have to write it 10 times, that's fine. The only caveat is that you have to wait 24 hours for every time after the initial 2 tries until you've passed the exam. And so, get in touch with Microsoft or NETCOM Learning rather to give you hands-on experience, hands-on guidance in terms of certifications and all that sort of information. Let's get trained and certified. Let's get everybody in the class. Let's get you up to date. Let's get you certified and knowing how the system works and making your life a lot less stressful and a lot more easy. Thank you very much for attending, and I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Brent. That was very informative. I know everyone is looking forward to the Q&A session, so go ahead and start putting your questions into the questions panel. And while you do that, I would like to give the presentation rights over to Sagnik, our vendor manager, to introduce you to our promotions and webinar-related courses.
I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, you are audible and we can see your screen.
Thank you everyone for joining us today in this insightful session. I'd like to announce that all the participants in today's session have been given exclusive free access to official Microsoft courseware on SC300 Microsoft Identity and Access Administrator. The best part is you also get to claim your digital achievement badges on Microsoft Learn to celebrate your Microsoft security skilling journey. To begin, you will need to click on the link provided in the chat box of your GoToWebinar viewer. Alternatively, you can also find this link in the downloadable event handout. Uh, Once you click on the link, you will find the set of instructions to redeeming your badges on this landing page that is currently visible on my screen. Allow me to demonstrate the process, and I encourage you to follow along with me. These badges issued by Microsoft can showcase your newly acquired skills and enhance your career opportunities. So, on the top of the page, you'll find the code here. The code that is specific to you would be visible when you open this landing page. And as you can see, you'd be getting access to the Microsoft official courseware on SC300 Identity and Access Administrator, and you'd also be able to unlock your digital achievement trophies and badges from Microsoft to celebrate your learning accomplishments. So this step-by-step information is also visually represented here. So we'll be quickly covering the steps that you need to follow. So the step one is to sign into your Microsoft Learn account using your personal or professional Outlook or Hotmail email. If you don't have an existing account, you can click on the create one option to follow the instructions. You will be able to see as you log into Microsoft Learn, the sign in option on the top right corner of your screen. Once you click on that, the pop-up will appear as shown here. Here you need to use your account credentials, and if you don't have one, you have to click on the create one. You can also use the links embedded here as part of the step one messaging to directly access the specific sections of this particular step. As step two, once you have logged into your profile, you need to access your profile page. So you would be clicking on the top right corner once again, and from the drop down, you're going to be selecting the profile option under your name as highlighted in the red over here. Once you go to your profile page, on the left hand side of your screen, you'd find the achievements tab under the Q&A option. So you'd find activity, training, certifications, Q&A, and then the achievements option you'd be able to see on the left side panel. You're going to select that option, and once you select that, at the top, you'd find under achievement section, it would be a prompt, have an achievement code, redeem your code now. All you need to do is click on that option and the pop-up is going to appear on your screen, wherein you have to uh, uh, put in the specific code that would be visible on once you log into your this landing page. You're going to copy that code over here and click on the redeem option. Once you click on redeem, then it's going to prompt you that the code has been successfully added to your profile and unlocking your achievement. You will receive the message indicating that you have been given access to the courseware and the achievement has been added. So you can access the materials and the modules from the training tab and be proud of your achievement and celebrate it by sharing your digital trophy on your LinkedIn profiles. Don't forget to tag NETCOM Learning and Microsoft on your posts for maximum visibility and reach. Thank you for joining. And now we will take a look at the other resources that we have available for you today. As part of the handout, you'd find the content section. Everything is hyperlinked here, so feel free to use these links to visit the specific section that you want to explore. A quick word about us, NETCOM Learning. We are the winners of the 2022 Microsoft Learning Partner of the Year award, being recognized by Microsoft as the top learning partner in the world, being selected from over 3,900 nominations across 100 countries worldwide. We have serviced over 80% of the Fortune 1000 clientele, and we have a significant presence within the US government sector, having served 100 plus US military bases. Overall, we have supported over 16,000 plus enterprise customers, having successfully trained over 175,000 professionals. We also enjoy a 96% recommendation from our client base, and all our trainings are delivered by a portfolio of 3,000 plus certified instructors. We are the one-stop solution for all your corporate upskilling needs, being an authorized training partner for every industry-leading vendor, including Microsoft, AWS, Cisco, CompTIA, PMI, and more. As part of this handout, you'd find the link to today's session recording. Feel free to access this recording to revisit the concepts covered as part of today's masterclass. All the participants today have gotten access to our NETCOM 365 learning portal. It is a highly effective tool that is leveraged by our customers in their scaling journey. We highly encourage all the participants to activate your portals and explore the resources available within NETCOM 365. Now, quickly, let's take a look at some of the latest offers on the official Microsoft trainings and certifications. For our enterprise customers, we have the Microsoft Skilling Program, which is the one-stop end-to-end upskilling program spanning across the entire official training portfolio of Microsoft across product lines like Azure, Microsoft Security, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Power Platform. Our solutions are highly aligned to industries verticals backed by industry-specific subject matter expertise. These are highly customizable, so we tailor the offerings based on your specific training objectives, the specific use cases and projects that your team needs to deliver on. As part of this program, your team will be getting end-to-end skilling plan support, wherein we'd be identifying the skill gaps that exist within your learners, and we would find the most cost-effective and impactful Microsoft skilling plan to achieve your business goals. We also encourage all our customers to explore our 2-hour private group training demo. It is a great opportunity for teams to explore the benefits of hands-on Microsoft training. These are also highly customizable. So if you are interested and you have a team to train, get in touch with our learning consultants, and we can devise an agenda that fits your needs. And as part of this offering, you'd also get end-to-end support on deploying your skilling plan. Moving on, as it has already been covered by our instructor, you'd find some facts about certifications. We highly encourage everyone to also check out the official ebook from Microsoft on the WinWin of Certifications, how employees and businesses thrive through continuous learning. You can access this free resource by using the link included in this handout. Our NETCOM Plus Learner subscription is the ideal tool to maximize your team's training budget. It's a subscription model, so you pay one time and you get unlimited access to authorized training across vendors like Microsoft, AWS, Cisco, CompTIA, and more for a span of 12 months. There are 3 packages available under NETCOM Plus. You can start and explore the offerings with the Silver package. We highly recommend you explore the Gold and the Platinum packages, which come with over 400 plus e-learning modules and 100 plus VILT course offerings. For our enterprise customers, we have the Learning Passport. So if you have a distributed team and you need access to flexible team training, NETCOM Learning's Learning Passport is the tool for you. Under this solution, you get access to our entire authorized training portfolio covering 4,000 plus official courses. So all your funds are parked safely with us with a validity of 12 months. And once you maintain your training funds with NETCOM Learning as part of the Learning Passport, you enjoy additional training fund value up to 100%. Feel free to learn more about this offering using the link here, and our learning consultants can guide you on how you can leverage this solution to power your uh, organizational skilling requirements. Now we'll quickly take a look at the recommended courses related to today's topic. In this slide, you'd find the fundamentals and the role-based courses mapped here. Everything is hyperlinked. So all you need to do is just click on the course that you are interested in exploring, and you would be able to access all the related documentation on the same. We also encourage everyone to explore our upcoming free offerings. We have an event that is listed here. Feel free to use the links to register for the same. All our VILT classes are backed by an offer currently. So all the trainings that you take come with a certification exam voucher and the practice test included with the price of the course. For Microsoft classes that you take with us, you get an 180-day access to the virtual labs so that you can master your role-based skills, along with a 90-day access to the class recordings for you to refer back even after your training has completed with us. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks so much for guiding us through that information, Sagnik. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. Our first question for the day is, can you use other types of security tools to connect to Azure?
Yes. So, well, yes and no. So you do need to use Azure Active Directory to connect to Azure to be able to access the resources in that platform. But you can use other tools to implement secondary levels of security. So as an example, you could use Azure Active Directory to manage the user accounts and passwords, but then you would use something like Okta as an MFA tool to validate as a secondary level of security to get you loaded in, logged into your Azure platform. But you still need to use the basic Azure Active Directory tools to get into the Azure platform.
Next question is, does AWS work with Azure connectors?
Yes, so it is possible to interact with AWS or Google Cloud using the Microsoft identity providers. There's a number of different ways of managing it. You can either do it as a single sign-on or a federated trust, but Azure platform tools will integrate and interact with AWS, as will the AWS tools allow you to interact and access Azure platform as well.
And the next question up in the queue is, what are the license costs to set up external connectors?
Okay, so as part of your tenant subscription, you automatically get access to all the Azure identity management tools. If there is a third-party tool that you purchase, such as Okta or some other one, you will need to pay for those subscriptions separately. But as far as the components and configuration tools that are available as part of the Azure platform, there's no extra costs for those identity management tools. You can just use them as part of your regular tenant subscription.
Once again, I want to remind you that as you leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to help us by taking a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience as we are constantly looking at how we can improve our future sessions. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. We want to thank all of you for joining us today, and if you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.